It is my great pleasure to announce that the Dr. Agata Calabrese is the winner of the AIA TELESTES Award 2023. The Archaeomusicology Interest Group Committee and Fabrizio Serra Editore decided to give the AIA TELESTES Award to her PhD thesis, Buried in the Senses, investigating the North Mesopotamian Early Bronze Age sensorial experiences of mortuary rituals with GIS. This is the motivation for the award. Dr. Agata Maria Catena Calabrese's thesis is celebrated by the Archaeomusicology Interest Group as one of the most interesting and groundbreaking research studies in recent years devoted to sensory and soundscape archaeology studies. Dr. Calabrese's work involved many different aspects of multisensory experience in ritual activities and the funerary sphere related to archaeological sites of North Mesopotamia during the Early Bronze Age. The mortuary arena in early Bronze Age Mesopotamian society included many different rituals and related multisensorial experiences. Among these, visibility, touch, movements, sounds, smell, and tastes played a major role. In her work, Dr. Calabrese explored funerary evidence in a new way, as well as the potential of sensorial and sound experiences analysis in order to enhance our knowledge of past societies. Agata Calabrese will be presented with a book voucher worth 1,500 euros provided by the Fabrizio Serra Editore. The award will also include an annual subscription to Telestes Journal. And this is the moment for congratulate with her. Congratulations, Agata. So I would like to invite the Agata Calabrese to introduce her work. Please, Agata, the floor is yours.
I'd like to start straight away thanking the IEA TELESTES Award and the Archaeomusicology Interest Group and the Fabrizio Serra Editori for giving me this pleasure of winning this award and giving me the pleasure of speaking tonight. Well, tonight for me and this afternoon for you. So mindful of the time, I'll just run through my PhD. Just bear in mind that this will be a short overview. And if you have more questions, I'll be happy to respond at the end. The questions can be both Italian and in English. So don't worry. So the topic of my PhD was exploring the sensorial experiences of funerary rituals in North Mesopotamia during the early Bronze Age through the use of GIS, which is a digital technology. So the spatial region was the North Mesopotamia, and I choose the early Bronze Age because it was an interesting moment when people start building their cities. There is an elite, our government per se, and there is writing. So we have more information about what was happening at that time thanks to the writing and the written sources. So how do we know that the funeral was made with different experiences and with different rituals? Well, we have one of cuneiform writings about the Inanna's descendants to the netherworld, which clearly says that the funeral rituals, well, the funerary sphere is made with different sounds. So they spoke, they shouted, people were guilt, afflicted, and they mention also special instruments. So the sounds of the drums, beating of the drums, and then other parts of their bodies like the eyes, the nose. So from this very short overview of the netherworld, the descendants to the netherworld, we can see that the funeral rituals and the funerary sphere per se was filled with many sensorial experiences. So from the textual sources and from the archaeological records, we know that the funeral rituals was made of important aspects, such as, for example, the grave, the funerary offerings, the ceremonies of fasting, the ceremonies of ritual name calling, and post-funerary rituals, which involved also consumptions of food and drink. So as you can see just right now, the sensorial experiences played an important role in the funerary because of the many rituals involved. So visibility, movement, physical interactions, sound in particular, odors, and tasted played an incredible role in participating and understanding the funerary rituals. How sensorial experiences work. So basically, we as humans understand the world through our home world, which is the surrounding world that we can experience through our senses. What is very interesting, at least for me, is that sight, which in the modern times is the main, we would say is the main senses, has only 100 milliseconds of recall. Instead, taste has 5 seconds of recall. That means that once you taste something or once you touch something, then you'll remember 5 seconds of that experience throughout your life, if that's meaning, of course. And then it helps you, like this experience helps you to create a long-term and a short-term and a sensory memory through an emotional response that you create. So this is just a very short, brief analysis on how sensory experiences works and why it's so important. So basically you have a stimulus, so something happened like a funerary rituals, you get all of these senses surrounding you, and the emotional evaluation, attribution is created, and this create a final response in you or in the community that experienced this. So my PhD investigated several sites, but I chose to explain just one today for the short amount of time that I have. So I would focus on the case study of Ebla. Ebla is a crucial site because it has so many written information that it gives us more knowledge about the site and the people that used to live there in the early Bronze Age. One particular aspect is the ritual journey that the queen and the king used to do in Hebla cyclically, and this was called the kingship rituals. This happened generally after the death of the king and continues cyclically, like in repetition after death, just to basically underline the kingship and the role of the king as the continuation from his ancestors. So in red here, you can see that the princess during this journey to become queen and to marry the king, and the king to become from prince to become king, they go through the entire city and they perform rituals. They perform rituals of funerary acknowledgement, a lot of food, drinks, and music, of course, and lots of movement. So if we put this information into a GIS system, I try to understand how far, for example, the ritual can be seen. So if we say that the ritual was performed in the highest part, so near the temple of Kura, which was the highest and most important part of the ritual, we can clearly see from GIS that the ritual can be seen from very far away. So the black spots here suggest the spots where you could see. So if you were standing here, for example, you could see the ritual performed here. Of course, if you would stand here, you would see more details of the rituals itself than if you stay here. But this means that even if you stay here, so very far away, you could still be able to see and participate somehow to the ritual. Another important aspect was the touch and proximity. So I was very interested in knowing how far people were from the rituals every day in their normal life. So if you put a lot of data on the terrain and on the usual habits of people, you would know that people could be found here, like the maximum they can travel every day for work, it would be the blue line. This means if you put this together with the visibility, it means that people, the majority of time, were able to see the rituals performed here, even though they were doing normal activities, such as like a pasture their cows, or doing agriculture activities here in the green area. So this means basically that if the king and the queen were doing the rituals and people were not invited because they were like performing their normal duties, their normal activities, this means that people were still able to see it and to feel it, the ritual. Hearing was a very crucial part of the ritual itself. We know from the writing that Ebla had several sounds component into these rituals. So we know that there were singers, so both female and male, that there was some sort of choir, so people, group of 6 women or 6 men or smaller than this were participating in the rituals and doing like a chorus. So a narrator, one person was saying something and the chorus was responding. So we know that several sounds component were part of the rituals. So I tried to put, and this also says the number of musical instruments that were used in Ebla. We're not sure if all of the instruments were used in these rituals, but this is probably the case that the majority were used. So this is the sound parameters you would put into the GIS. I would not go into details, otherwise we can spend here the entire night. But being reassured that to perform like a sound analysis, you would need a lot of data on this. So I tried to perform sound analysis on different sounds. So for example, this will be the spread of sound from a narrator. So we said that during the wailing ceremony or the funerary ceremony, there was one person, generally a male figure, that would speak and dictate the rhythm of the ceremony. So from this, you can understand that the sound of the orator would spread in the red area. And if there was very silent in the surrounding area, the green, and so on. But this is very crucial because the red area include all the main important areas within the city. So that means, again, if people were doing something unrelated to the rituals, they would still be able to participate through hearing. This is a female singer, not trained, because we are not sure of the level of training. We know that singers were trained, but we're not sure of the level of training. So it will be like a modern training. So this is an amateur, and this is a more trained female voice. So as you can see, it spread way beyond just the city center. And this is a male singer, both amateur and trained. So that means that if you can afford a male singer to play your ritual and to sing to your ritual, this will go very far away, not just in the city center, but more towards the city itself. This is a choir of 4 females, and this is a choir of 4 males. And then musical instruments. So lyre, of course, you would understand that lyre doesn't spread that much because it's a small string instrument. This is a small drum. And this instead is a large drum, which we know existed at that time. So that means if you had a large drum, the beats could be heard, again, very far away. This is a small horn that we know it was used at Hebla. And so another important aspect of the ritual is the olfactory, so the smell within the ritual itself. We know that incense was used as well as burning of food, for example. So again, these are the smell parameters you would put GIS to trying to map out the spread of some smells. And as I mentioned before, we know that incense was very much used in this period. So this first image show how much the incense would spread within an hour. So again, the reddish one is the one that close people will experience the most, so the most like swift odor. And instead, the people in the green area would probably slightly feel it, or if there was wind, they could probably not feel it at all. And this is the incense after 24 hours. And this is the funerary banquet, which again, it could spread a bit more, but it doesn't include the entire city center. And this is the banquet 24 hours later. Another important aspect, which is impossible right now to investigate through GIS, is taste, but it's equally important as the others sensory experiences that could be traced with GIS. So that's why it's in my thesis as well. We know that an important part of the funeral rituals and after the funeral rituals was the consumption of food and the distribution, cooking of food. So we know that the teaspoon was a very important part of caring for the death, both during the funeral, soon after the funeral, and afterwards, like in the afterlife. So we know that food and drink consumption was very much in vogue, and there is a possibility of some sacrifices. So this is, for example, a talisman which represents a funerary banquet, and it was discovered near a tomb. So we know that there was some sort of food consumptions that probably involved meat as well as vegetables, but we're not sure exactly what kind of food. So just on a wrapping note, there is no doubt that the sensorial experiences of funeral rituals is a multisensorial experience. So as we said before, and at the very beginning, funeral rituals in early Bronze Age Mesopotamia were very large component made of very different things, very different flavors like taste, very different odors, activities which involve lots of sounds, lots of movement, lots of being close and distance, and visibility as well. So there is no doubt that multisensory experiences was important in understanding the death. So the short conclusions of this short presentation is that the sensory experiences of death and of the burial left tangible archaeological traces, like for example the small figurines I show you, and all the tombs with the funeral remains will show you that the sensory experience of death, it's something that can left archaeological traces. But something that really struck me and interested me is that you can have passive and active sensorial experiences. So I show you at the beginning, like with visibility, people that worked far away from the city and not involved in the ritual itself, they could still hear it, they could still see it, they could still be part of it, even though they do not actively participate in the rituals. They do not actively, touch the body, but they can be passively experiencing this. So if we put the area if we divide the area around the main focal point into 4 spaces, we can understand the sensory experiences that people from different distance could experience. So people in the first place, so people that could touch the body, the deceased body, they were very close. So they had like a maximum experience. People in the second place, which were probably the family, could have, again, a very high experience, but touch was less because they couldn't touch the body itself. The people in the third space were probably the extended family. So, I don't know, for example, cousins, uncles, and aunties. So they could still experiences, but with less of sight, of touch. But people from the fourth space, and this is something very interesting, at least for me, is that people from the fourth space, so very far away, not related to the mortuary spirit, to the mortuary rituals, that they were doing other daily activity, they will still be able to experience the funerary rituals through some senses. So just as a remarks, the sensorial experiences had the impacts way beyond just the senses and the emotional response. They create a strong link, a strong emotional link between the past and the present. They create a strong sense of community, a strong sense of politics, and a strong sense of resilience. So that is not the end. And so that's why investigating the sensorial experiences of death is very important in this sense. So thank you so much. I hope I stay in the time frame. And thanks again for giving me this pleasure of talking and for giving me the award.